prosecution rested its case this afternoon in the trial of noted Norfolk attorney Calvin Brite, who is charged with financing almost $200,000 in cocaine buys. Joel Rubin is standing by live with the Live 10 News van at U.S. District Court in Norfolk. Joel, what's going on?
Bob, when this trial began on Monday, the government told us that we were going to be meeting some very unsavory characters. Well, we have. We've met Harry Creta, the infamous kidnapper, bookmaker, drug dealer. We met Carl Tatum, a thug who's blown up boats and beat up people for the right price, and Charles McElwain, a convicted drug dealer. And all of them have implicated Calvin Brite. Now, Brite, today McElwain went on the stand, and he said that back in 1980, he bought 2 kilos of cocaine for Brite, who you see here leaving court just about a half hour ago. He bought those 2 kilos. He says he delivered them to Brite, then went with Brite to Harry Creta, where the cocaine was cut and tested. McElwain then sold the cocaine. He also said that he snorted cocaine at Brite's house with another woman later in the year 1980. That was denied by Calvin Brite's wife, who went on the stand later as a defense witness. But she also said that she had no knowledge of her husband ever dealing with drugs and that she never knew anything about him having any big gambling debts. That contradicted an earlier defense witness who said that Calvin Brite, a bookie who was this defense witness, who said that Calvin Brite ran up gambling debts of some $28,000. So there are definitely some contradictions here, and maybe they'll be cleared up tomorrow when Calvin Brite goes on the stand.
Okay, Joel, it sounds like it's going to come down to Brite's word against his accusers then.
It certainly does. Brite will be on the stand, we believe, tomorrow morning, and he's got a very heavy burden to bear here because all the testimony so far seems to have gone against him.
All right, you'll have more on the story tonight at 11 o'clock.
Sure will.
Thank you, Joel. Diana?
For 3 days, Calvin Brite has sat at the defense table listening to a series of convicted criminals accuse him of financing drug deals. Kidnapper Harry Creta testified that Brite twice gave him $60,000 to buy kilos of cocaine in exchange for $25,000 in profit. Convicted drug dealer Charles McElwain said Brite gave him almost $100,000 to buy 2 kilos, adding that he also snorted coke in Brite's house. Despite the damaging testimony, the defendant appeared calm and confident as he left court Wednesday, knowing that on Thursday he would finally take the stand in his own defense. Just before lunch, he did, categorically denying that he has ever participated in a drug deal. He told an attentive jury and packed courtroom that the $20,000 he borrowed from a client was to repay a large gambling debt, not to buy cocaine. Brite said he couldn't have laid his hands on $60,000 at one time, even if he had wanted to. He called Creta a pathological liar, and under questioning by defense attorney Richard Bridges, Brite suggested that McElwain was only protecting himself from further prosecution by not telling the truth. His career on the line, Brite emotionally declared his innocence and maintained his story during a rigorous cross-examination. Court adjourned before the lawyers could make their closing arguments. When we resume tomorrow morning, they will sum up their cases. Then it will be up to the jury to decide the fate of the other attorney in the courtroom, the man on trial, Calvin Brite. In Norfolk, Joel Rubin, The Daily News. For the first 3 days of this trial, attorney Calvin Brite has been characterized as a big money man, capable of spending huge sums on cocaine deals for profit, then blowing equally large sums on gambling. Nearly every witness, even those called by the defense, implicated Brite in a series of large cocaine deals. Brite knew he would have to save his own skin, and on day 4 of the trial, he may have succeeded. The 57-year-old attorney, emotionally at times, denied ever buying, selling, or using drugs. Brite admitted owing bookie Al Rago nearly $30,000 in gambling debts, saying $20,000 he borrowed from a client was to repay Rago, not to finance cocaine purchases. To a packed courtroom, he called his accusers, including convicted drug dealer Charles McElwain and convicted kidnapper Harry Creta, liars, saying each had their own reasons for fingering him. As Brite left the courtroom, he was cautiously optimistic. Brite, do you feel like you convinced the jury today?
I'll know tomorrow.
You'll know tomorrow? When court resumes in the morning, the respective lawyers will present closing arguments. Then it will be up to the jury to decide whether Calvin Brite was telling the truth or giving the greatest performance of his 31-year legal career. In Norfolk, Joel Rubin, The Daily News. Calvin Brite took a leisurely walk around the block as he awaited the jury's decision. Earlier in court, his lawyer characterized him as a respected member of the community who had been falsely accused by criminals, the dregs of society, he called them, of bankrolling lucrative drug deals. The government prosecutor, however, said his witnesses, as corrupt as they are, were telling the truth, and that Calvin Brite, despite his denials, did have access to the $60,000 he needed to make that first coke deal. The summation's over. The jury began its deliberations around noon. At 6:30, the 12 jurors emerged. Their sentence of 8 counts against Brite, not guilty on 5, guilty on 3. 1 for conspiracy to distribute cocaine, the other 2 for actually doing it. The 2 prosecutors left the court building hurriedly.
Absolutely.
Any aspect of this?
No, we can't.
Can't comment at all?
Can't comment at all.
Defense attorney Richard Bridges found something to smile about in the verdict and predicted better success on appeal.
They had an awful lot of doubt, only to convict on 3 out of 8 when they had a lot of opportunities, but we think that we've got a good shot at it.
Brite himself departed the courthouse surrounded by family and friends, some of whom tussled with photographers.
Why not?
Doing their job.
Who you hitting?
Hey, Brite will be sentenced October 21st. He could receive up to 45 years in prison and or $75,000 in fines. In Norfolk, Joel Rubin, The Daily News.